What is up, guys? It is Styx here, and today I'm doing a bit more of a commentary style video on the best and worst things based on community sentiment and my own opinion for Destiny 2: The Edge of Fate. Keep in mind, this is being made and recorded prior to Ashen Iron's release, so some of this might end up outdated later, but at the end of the day, we have the expansion right now. I'm going to talk about it now. And before we get directly into the video, if you want to support the channel, I have an advanced.gg link, Styx10 for 10% off, and a Patreon in the description. Starting off with the fifth worst thing, in my personal opinion, is the bugs and unintentional problems that have come throughout this expansion so far. Now, the expansion launch itself was actually pretty good. There wasn't a whole lot of people dropping out and all of that stuff, or like loss of connection. There were some weasels and stuff like that, but as far as expansion drops go, it was pretty good. However, as you can see, there is a bunch of known issues, a college dissertation's worth. You could easily go in depth on any one of these bullet points that they have labeled here, the severity of which can go all the way from being soft locked in one of the solo ops, or having your Crucible ops stuff go to the postmaster or trials or whatever, and then it can be as severe as of last week, if you were Guardian rank 7, you would not have been able to reach Guardian rank 8 the entire week because they turned on a surge event that then made it so that any famine modifiers could no longer be picked. And instead of putting out some kind of general statement or fixing it during that week, they're just like, all right, just wait. They said nothing. In addition, the flagship like exotic for the expansion, the one that had the big quest that they advertised and all of that, currently there's no lore tab, so there's that. Now for the fifth best thing, I'm going to say the seasonal hub. The daily, weekly challenges and the weekly rank, I'm including all of that in this seasonal hub, that's the main thing I'm going to be talking about, provides a very, very consistent source of rewards that have been very easy for newer players to just visually see what they need to do, rather than having to go and do a bunch of bounties at different locations that are not directly told to you. So I would say that that is a positive. Most of these allow you to do them in multiple different activities at the same time, and they all have different scaling based on whether you're doing it in PvP or PvE or whatever you're doing. And maybe it's just personal bias I didn't really do a whole lot of hard math on before and versus after, but I'm thinking currently that if you're doing the daily and weekly challenges and stuff like that, you're getting a lot more bright dust and XP for your time than the previous system, which is a positive. For the fourth worst thing, I'm going to put as a general label here as communication between Bungie and the general player base right now. This is because since the expansion is released, a lot of the communication from Bungie feels a lot like them repeating the phrase, we're listening, we're listening, we're listening, while not actually hearing what the general player base is telling them. They are completely ignoring a lot of things, or they are just not hearing them because they're focused on some other group of people that is very clearly not the general player base. The TWAB addresses several issues that they have decided to fix, which I will talk about some of the ways they've decided to fix them later, but many of these updates and changes to different things have not exactly come across very positively with the community, because they are not telling us why they are deciding to make these decisions, and they are instead treating us more as if it's like a stockholder meeting. They're giving us a bunch of blanketed statistics on how they're taking advantage of playtime and all of this, but they're not actually explaining how this is going to help us as players, or if it's going to help us as players, and that does feel intentional. For the fourth best thing, I'm going to say that the portal as a concept in general is a positive, in my opinion. This gives a very easy way for anyone who is new to the game. I have gotten several people into the game since Edge of Fate has launched, and this is one of the things that makes it quite a bit easier to direct them, because instead of telling them, oh, you have to go to this thing with a yellow symbol and this thing with a yellow symbol, but some of those you can't do because you're in blah 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 blah, I can just tell them, go to the portal, find an activity that looks cool, make sure it says it has matchmaking on it, and do that and just try it out. Or I can take them into the portal myself. In addition, they brought back the Nightfall modifiers and then applied them to pretty much every activity you can do except for PvP, which I think is also a very nice addition to have to the game. It's very easy to use this system, and it's very simple when you're just trying to grind your power or grind your level or whatever you want to do, or just run some casual stuff with your friends. Now, there are negatives, and I will get into that as well, but for now, the general portal I would say is the fourth best thing on this list. Now for the third worst thing, Kepler, the entire area, the whole thing. The best part of a destination, for me, every time they have released a new destination, be it Tangled Shore, the Dreaming City, the Pale Heart, my favorite part of every destination I have ran into is being able to see someone out in the wild, being able to see them as they get crushed by a Cabal drop pod, seeing them run public events, running public events with them, watching everyone run around looking for high value targets. All kinds of these things contribute to what makes the game feel alive and like a multiplayer experience, because that is what this game is. They're trying to make it more MMO-like, very clearly. And when you add a destination that you have to load in with a fire team in order to have any multiplayer experience in the destination, that is extremely counterintuitive to making the game feel like an MMO, making it feel like a massively multiplayer online game. Not only is Kepler not very visually stimulating in any way, shape, or form, but it's also extremely isolating, because you are the only person there unless you load into a fireteam finder or you load in with some friends or something. In addition, the sieve should just go into the portal, and it should be available all of the time, and if they're worried about you getting certain rewards, just max it out on like 5 times a day or something. I don't know. But making the sieve available only at specific periods of time and only available when you load into Kepler is just a huge pain, especially for people who have limited times that they can play, because if you're only able to play for an hour, and that hour just happens to be a time when the sieve is unavailable, well, good luck getting your Graviton Spike, I guess, or good luck getting rolls on the new exotic. You're just not going to. Number 3 for the best things in this expansion is Armor 3.0. It's basically a Destiny 3 disguised as a major update for Destiny 2. It reset everyone to a mostly level playing field, and illegal armor rules, while they do exist, are slowly being kind of eked out by tier 5 loot, because that tier 5 loot allows you to make your secondary stats more prominent, and it lets you build that up quite a bit better, and font mods as well. So if you are keeping that in mind, then the illegal armor is getting less and less useful as people are getting higher and higher tiered gear. The tiered gear is also very easy to get once you get to those higher deltas. And if you don't have any of that illegal armor, then tier 3 is just going to be amazing for you, because it's tons of stats, tons of everything, and then you get the occasional tier 4, and that's even more stats. So I think that in general, the Armor 3.0 itself is a very positive change for the game. It's also given a plenty of reason for people to go out and want to get new loot. The armor set bonuses have also added a bit of an extra dimension to gameplay. I know they experimented with this by making it so that the armor sets gave you more rewards, but the sets having more of a gameplay difference with how you use them has been a very positive experience, at least for me. Now for number 2 on the worst things in this expansion, the scarcity in the portal. I addressed how the portal in general is a good and positive thing in my opinion, and based on general sentiment, people seem to like it, especially newer players who aren't sure where to go. But the scarcity in the portal is kind of an issue because a lot of the best activities in the game are just not there. There's no raid stuff at all, there's no dungeons, most of the exotic missions are missing, most of them. It's not like most of them are here and then there's a couple here and there that are missing. No, most of the exotic missions that have existed in this game are completely missing from the portal. And I get that they have to tier the loot that they add into the portal, and so they might be less willing to do that, but they should have just done that beforehand if they were going to do this. There are so many solo ops and fireteam ops missions and stuff like that, and dungeons and raids are considered some of their best content. Even just adding in a layer of these, like they're planning to do in Ash and Iron for some of the dungeons, some Pantheon style stuff where it's just you load in for one encounter, that can be great, and that will give people an opportunity to learn potentially some of the easier dungeon and raid layers. They could even bring in an explorer mode on some of those to explain the mechanics to these people, but instead they choose to completely ignore them for the time being, which has completely restricted a huge subset of the community that actively plays their game, which is what they're trying to encourage right now. They want you to play the game frequently, they want you to spend your time enjoying the game. But by making it so that you are unable to do these raids and dungeons and get the new loot and stuff, it's really just bottlenecking the player numbers going into the portal and going into these other activities, which is probably why some of them are so popular. And even when Ash and Iron drops, they're only adding a few dungeon layers. So a significant amount of these missions are going to be unavailable for the time being as far as the portal is concerned. And in that case, as far as new players are concerned as well. Now for number 2 on the best things of this expansion, I am going to say the narrative. I love the lore to this game. I love the story. It's one of my favorite aspects of playing a new expansion. And this expansion, while starting off slow in like the first half of it, really got me invested as it went on in whatever new saga we're entering, this Fate saga that they have stated. And I'm not going to spoil anything in case you have not played and you are watching this for whatever reason, but I highly recommend engaging with the story. It is very nice. I really like it. I really like the way it ended. I really like the way it opens things up for the future. It also feels like a great starting point for newer players because they don't need a lot of background information in order to understand what's going on. It being slow to the start does mean that they get to explain who these characters are. They get to explain the important information you need to know. And a lot of the stuff that you would even have known prior is restated so that if you were new, you would learn that information during the story instead of having to find it out afterwards, which I think is a great positive when you're trying to bring in a huge new subset of players when we just finished a 10-year saga. Now, for the worst thing, I'm going to first go with an honorable mention, which is the useless vendors now. Aside from Zer, there is no use to most of the vendors in the tower. Banshee still has the bounties, which is nice, and some of the gear, right? Ada, if you really want the transmog or whatever that stuff, she's there. But they have their shoot-in uses. If you go to Shaxx, if you go to Saint when it's not a Friday for trials, if you go to Zavala for anything other than the seasonal hub stuff, like a lot of these vendors, they've basically been gutted because they don't have bounties anymore. They don't have a reputation rank anymore. You basically go to them and then you spend some glimmer and some masterwork cores and boom, you get free gear. That's it. Drifter as well. And while that does simplify things a bit more, that also has made me question why they are there if they are now just taking up the place of a glorified kiosk or emblem carrier. So I really hope they do something with them that makes them a bit more interesting to interact with. But the number one worst thing in this expansion is the power grind. It has a lot of negative community sentiment, and in my opinion, the general idea of it is good. Separate the more dedicated players from the players who might play more casually. You make things more rewarding and get more loot as you push your power level higher. But the problem with this is that, for one, the higher tier gear does not just drop from higher difficulty activities. Doing the raid, for example, until very recently, even contest mode gave you tier 1 gear, which made absolutely no sense. And it doesn't give tier 5 gear until the new contest mode drops, where they will also be increasing the baseline drops of the gear, which, you know, I guess you just have to wait for that one, or make sure you're doing more feats in your raid. I think that it would be a significantly better system if it was much easier to hit that 400, and then, to be honest, at that point they could leave 400 to 450 alone, because at 400 you can get tier 4 gear, and then you have a chance to get tier 5 gear if you get an A+ loot drop or whatever, or if you get a prime engram, because that drops 1 tier higher than what you would have received. But instead, you have these huge power differentials between players, which makes playing with your friends significantly harder if you both want good loot, because either they're going to have to do really, really hard stuff compared to what they would normally have to do in order for you to get loot, or you are just not going to get loot at all. In addition to that, with Ash and Iron, the power level that you're going to want to reach is going to be higher, so you're even more disadvantaged to try and grind it out now, because it's just going to be increased later, which means that getting to 450 will be way easier then than now. So if you are at that level where you're at 400 or higher, I don't recommend trying to grind your power. Just play the game how you want to, and then let the power increase come to you when Ash and Iron drops on the 20th. And according to the recent twin, sort of circling back into the communication thing, they have decided to nerf solo ops and encore instead of just buffing everything else, because what they want is for us to have less rewards, not for solo ops and encore to not be the most played activities. They just want us to have less things, from my understanding, which is extremely confusing because this is a looter shooter. Why are we punished for wanting more loot? I shrug. But either way, into the honorable mentions for the best thing of the expansion, in my personal opinion. The events have felt extremely rewarding, especially Solstice. Arms Week was pretty good. Having it restricted to what tiers we could get makes sense in retrospect, because they had an expected level for us to be at, and so we weren't able to get higher tier gear because we weren't expected to be able to get it to drop, basically. But The Solstice event, which gave everyone like +1 or +2 tier increases, was really nice. That was a really solid, for me at least. I was only hitting around like late 200s, early 300s when it came out. And so it let me grind my power without actually grinding it. I was just playing to get the loot that I wanted. And I was able to get some tier 3 and tier 4 drops that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to get at that level differential. And then I was able to get some tier 5 shiny loot as well, which ties into the #1 best thing of this expansion: tiered loot. The whole tier system. It's all phenomenal. There is nothing that makes me want to play an activity that I hate for hours on end more than telling me that there's a shiny version of a gun that I want that has 3 perks in each slot that might be hot garbage, but the gun will look good. I will tell you that much. I have spent an embarrassing amount of time running solo trials just to get a tier 5 Auric Disabler and Aurus Neutralizer with the perks that I want. The tier 5 armor also significantly helps with the stat diversity 3.0 stuff, like I mentioned earlier, and the limits on the current armor archetypes, which I'm sure we'll end up getting more variants, but for now at least, this tiered loot is absolutely great. So yeah, that's my general opinion on the expansion. You know, 5 things I like, well I guess 6 things I like, 6 things I don't like too much. If you enjoy this more commentary style content, maybe more opinion based stuff, let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, like, comment, subscribe, check out my links in the description if you're interested, and peace, gamers.